The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floor. Representatives from 12 different species sat in their specially designed chambers, each one built to support their unique biology. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime, converting thoughts and sounds into something every being could understand. Ambassador Hyun Woo adjusted his simple black suit and looked around the massive room. After 5 years representing Earth in the Council, he still felt small in this place. The other species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and most aliens still saw them as newcomers who didn't understand how things really worked. Today would test that theory. The holographic display in the center of the hall showed a swirling mass of purple and gold energy. It looked beautiful, like a cosmic storm painted by an artist who had never seen real weather. But Hyun Woo knew better. This was the Kepler 442 system, and it was one of the most dangerous places in the known galaxy. "Honored delegates," announced Counselor Veltar, the Zephyrian representative. Veltar looked like a giant praying mantis made of silver metal, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed blue when he spoke. "We have gathered to discuss the final attempt to recover the Vorthak artifact." The display zoomed in on the storm system. Deep inside the swirling energy, a small object pulsed with its own light. It was barely visible, but every species in the galaxy wanted it. The Vorthak had disappeared millions of years ago, but their technology was still the most advanced ever discovered. This artifact could change everything about space travel. "The mission parameters remain unchanged," Veltar continued. His translator gave his words a mechanical edge. "The artifact lies in the center of a quantum storm system. The journey requires passage through temporal distortions, radiation fields, and gravitational anomalies that defy our current understanding of physics." A new voice joined the discussion. It sounded like music played through water. "The Nexari Collective has completed our analysis," said the representative, a creature that looked like living crystal shaped into something almost humanoid. "Our computers have run the mission scenario 847,000 times. The success probability is 0.003%. Hyunwoo frowned. 3 chances in 100,000. Those were terrible odds, even by human standards. Furthermore, the Nexari continued, the radiation levels would kill most carbon-based life forms within minutes. The gravitational stress would crush any known ship design, and the temporal distortions make navigation impossible. Our best pilots cannot compensate for time moving at different speeds in different locations." The Thraxian delegate spoke next. Thraxians looked like bears crossed with robots, covered in thick armor plating. 17 expeditions have attempted this mission," he growled. 17 species have lost their best ships and crews. The storm system has become a graveyard. Around the hall, other delegates began to speak. The ethereal collective withdrew their support through a series of colorful light patterns. The Corvan Empire stated that the mission exceeded their acceptable risk parameters by 400%. The militant Union of Kresh declared the artifact cursed by the void itself. One by one, each species formally announced their withdrawal from the mission. The reasons were always logical, always backed by data and careful analysis. The math was clear. This mission could not be completed successfully. When the last delegate finished speaking, Counselor Veltar turned his glowing eyes toward the human section. "Ambassador Hyun Woo, does Earth wish to add anything to these proceedings?" Hyun Woo stood slowly. At 45 years old, he looked ordinary compared to the magnificent aliens around him. His black hair was starting to show gray at the temples. His face carried the lines of someone who had seen too much war and too little peace. But his voice was steady when he spoke. Earth volunteers to take the mission. The translator system struggled for a moment. Several delegates asked for clarification, certain they had misunderstood. The hall filled with sounds that no human throat could make, chittering, harmonic vibrations, electromagnetic pulses that registered as static through the speakers. Veltar's blue eyes dimmed and brightened several times. Ambassador, perhaps you did not understand the presentation. This mission has a 0.03% chance of success. That means 99.997% chance of death. I understood perfectly, Hyunwoo replied. Earth accepts those odds. The Nexari representative's crystal body flashed red. This is not logical. Humans are known for reckless behavior, but this exceeds even your species' usual disregard for safety. The mission is mathematically impossible, added the Thraxian. Your computers must show the same results as ours. Hyunwoo looked around the hall. These beings had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They had technology that seemed like magic to humans. Their ships could cross the galaxy in days. Their weapons could destroy entire solar systems. Their minds could process information faster than the most advanced human computers. But they were all afraid. You're right, Hyunwoo said. Our computers show the same results. The mission is probably impossible. The odds are terrible. Most likely, we will die trying. He paused, letting his words sink in. But you're missing something important. You're thinking like machines. You see bad odds and you quit. You see danger and you run away. You see a problem that's too hard and you decide it can't be solved. The hall was completely silent now. Even the translator systems seemed to be holding their breath. Humans don't work that way, Hyunwoo continued. We don't quit because something is dangerous. We don't give up because the odds are bad. And we definitely don't walk away because a problem seems too hard. He gestured toward the holographic storm system. You see an impossible mission. We see a challenge. You see certain death. We see an adventure. You see a 0.003% chance of success. We see a chance. The ethereal collective's light patterns shifted to confused purple. The Corvan delegate made a sound like grinding metal. Veltar's eyes flickered rapidly. This is madness, the Nexari said. You cannot succeed where 12 advanced civilizations have failed. Maybe not, Hyunwoo admitted. But we're going to try anyway, because that's what humans do. We try impossible things. Sometimes we fail, but sometimes, just sometimes, we succeed. He straightened his tie and looked directly at Veltar. The vote has been called. Every other species has withdrawn. Earth accepts the mission. We'll manage it. The Council cannot support a suicide mission, Veltar protested. The loss of human life would be our choice, Hyunwoo interrupted. You asked for volunteers. We volunteered. The mission parameters haven't changed. The artifact is still there. Someone still needs to retrieve it. The Thraxian leaned forward. And when you fail? When your ship joins the graveyard in the storm? Hyunwoo smiled for the first time during the meeting. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the kind of smile humans wore when they were about to do something that terrified everyone else. Then at least we'll have tried. And maybe the next group of humans will learn from our mistakes and succeed. The next group? The Nexari's crystal body flashed confused colors. You would send more humans to die? We'd send as many as it takes, Hyunwoo said simply. That's the difference between humans and everyone else. You quit when the odds get bad. We keep trying until we win, or there's nobody left to try. The hall erupted again in alien sounds of disbelief and horror, but underneath it all, Hyunwoo could hear something else. Something that sounded almost like respect. The council voted. Earth was granted full authority over the mission. All other species were formally released from any obligation to participate. As the delegates filed out of the hall, Veltar approached Hyunwoo. "I do not understand your species," the Zephyrian said. "Logic suggests you will all die for nothing." Hyunwoo gathered his papers and looked at the storm system one more time. Maybe. But logic also said humans would never leave their home planet. Logic said we'd never survive first contact with alien species. Logic said we'd never earn a place in this council. He headed toward the exit, then paused and looked back. "Logic is useful, Veltar, but it's not everything. Sometimes you need something more powerful than logic." What could be more powerful than logic? Hyunwoo's smile returned. Stubbornness. Captain Dongmin sat in his office at Luna Station, staring at the numbers on his screen. The display showed 2,47891 applications, and the count was still climbing. Every few seconds, another name appeared on the list. Another human volunteering for what everyone called the suicide mission. He rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of coffee. The mug was a gift from his daughter, decorated with cartoon rockets and the words, "World's Best Space Dad." She was 8 years old and thought her father's job was exciting. She didn't know that this mission would probably make her an orphan. The door chimed and Lieutenant Colonel Su Jin walked in. She carried a stack of data tablets and looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually neat black hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her uniform showed coffee stains. "More applications?" Dongmin asked. "These are just the qualified ones," Su Jin replied, dropping the tablets on his desk. "I've been sorting through resumes for 18 hours straight. We could crew 100 ships with the people who want this job." Dongmin picked up one of the tablets and scrolled through profiles. Fighter pilots with perfect records. Engineers who had built impossible things in impossible places. Scientists who had made breakthrough discoveries. Soldiers who had survived. Battles that should have killed them. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why do they all want to die?" Su Jin sat down in the chair across from his desk. "I don't think they want to die, sir. I think they want to matter." She activated her own tablet and pulled up a news feed. The screen showed protests on Earth. Millions of humans gathering in cities around the world, holding signs that read, "We believe, and humans don't quit, and bring back the impossible." "The whole planet is watching," Su Jin continued. "For 50 years we've been the newcomers in the galaxy. The species that doesn't understand how things work. The ones who ask stupid questions and try impossible things." Dongmin nodded. He remembered his first meeting with alien representatives. The way they looked at him like he was a child playing with adult toys. The polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. The gentle corrections when he suggested something they considered naive. "Maybe this is our chance to prove we belong here," Su Jin said. "Or maybe people just can't stand the idea of walking away from a challenge." "Maybe they're all crazy," Dongmin muttered. "Probably," Su Jin agreed. "But crazy is what got us to the stars in the first place." Dongmin spent the next 6 hours reviewing applications. The stories were incredible. A pilot named Taeho, who had flown rescue missions through asteroid fields during the Belt Wars, navigating by instinct when his computers failed. An engineer named Ji Hai, who had lost her brother in the Mars colony disaster, but still designed the systems that kept 1 million people alive underground. There was Wu Jin, a weapons specialist whose grandfather had survived the Sol Siege by building explosives from household chemicals. His application included a detailed plan for fighting aliens using whatever we can find and human creativity. And Yunji, a medical officer who had performed surgery during a reactor breach on Luna Station, saving 12 lives while radiation alarms screamed around her. Her application simply said, "I fix people. This mission will break people. Seems like a good match." Each application told the same story in different ways. Humans who had faced impossible situations and found ways to survive. People who saw problems as puzzles to solve, not walls to stop them. "These are the most qualified people in human space," Dongmin said. "They could have safe, comfortable careers anywhere. Why throw it all away?" Sujin pulled up another file. Maybe because safe and comfortable isn't enough anymore. The file showed Earth's position in the galactic community. Humans were junior, members of the Council. Their technology was primitive. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. Other species traded with them out of politeness, not necessity. "We're the charity case," Sujin said. "The species that gets invited to meetings, but doesn't get to make real decisions. The ones who say thank you when others share their old technology." Dongmin understood. Humans had always been explorers. They had crossed oceans in wooden boats. They had climbed mountains because they were there. They had gone to space in metal cans powered by controlled explosions. The idea of being careful, sensible junior partners went against everything human nature stood for. "So they want to prove something," he said. "They want to prove we're still human," Sujin replied. The door chimed again. A young ensign entered, with another stack of applications. "Sir, we're getting volunteers from the outer colonies now. Long-range haulers are changing course to bring people here. And—" He paused, looking uncertain. "What is it, Ensign?" "We're getting applications from off-duty alien crew members, sir. They want to volunteer, too." Dongmin and Sujin exchanged glances. "Which species?" "Mostly younger ones, sir. Junior officers and recent academy graduates. The older aliens think they're crazy, but some of them want to join the human mission." That was unexpected. The galactic community had been very clear that this was humanity's problem. No other species would risk their people on such a hopeless mission. "I guess crazy is contagious," Sujin said. Over the next 2 days, Dongmin built his crew. He chose people based on their skills, but also on something harder to define. The way they answered questions, the look in their eyes when they talked about the mission, the kind of quiet confidence that came from surviving things that should have killed them. Ji-Hai became his chief engineer. During her interview, she had sketched modifications to their ship's power systems on a napkin. "The aliens say our technology is primitive," she said. "Good. Primitive technology is harder to break. And when it does break, you can fix it with a hammer and some wire." Tae-Ho was his pilot. The man had a record of successful flights that should have been impossible. When Dongmin asked about his secret, Tae-Ho shrugged. "Computers are logical. Space doesn't care about logic. Sometimes you have to feel your way through." Sujin became his science officer and translator. She spoke 17 different alien languages and had spent years studying xenobiology. More importantly, she had never met a problem she couldn't solve with enough coffee and determination. Wu Jin was his weapons specialist, though they all hoped weapons wouldn't be necessary. His background was unconventional. He had started as a construction worker before joining the military. "Humans have been solving problems with explosives for thousands of years," he said during his interview. I just do it in space now. Yun-ji was his medical officer. She was small and quiet, but her record showed nerves of steel under pressure. People break in space, she said simply. I put them back together. The rest of the crew was just as impressive. Navigation experts who could plot courses through impossible terrain, communication specialists who could jury-rig transmitters from spare parts, engineers who treated the laws of physics more like guidelines than absolute rules. On the final day of selection, Dongmin gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. Through the viewport, they could see their ship in the docking bay. The Indomitable looked small compared to alien vessels, but it was built by humans for humans. Every system was designed to be repaired, modified, or completely rebuilt with basic tools. Last chance to back out, Dongmin said. We launch tomorrow morning. The odds haven't changed. We're probably going to die. Ji-hai looked up from her engineering reports. Probably isn't definitely. Taeho was running flight simulations on his tablet. Besides, dying safely in bed is boring. Soo-jin had alien language textbooks spread across the table. The Vorthak left other artifacts scattered around the galaxy. If we succeed, we might be able to communicate with their technology directly. Woo-jin was cleaning his sidearm, even though regulations didn't require weapons for the mission. My grandfather used to say that the only way to guarantee failure is to not try. Yunji was reading medical journals about radiation exposure. Someone has to go. Might as well be us. Dongmin looked around the table at his crew. These people had volunteered to fly into a quantum storm that had destroyed every ship sent against it. They knew the odds. They understood the risks. They had families and friends and lives worth living, and they were all smiling. Any regrets? He asked. Just one, Taeho said. I wish we could have brought more ships. Why? Dongmin asked. Because if we succeed, everyone's going to want to try impossible missions, and there are a lot of impossible things out there waiting for us. That night, Dongmin called his daughter on Earth. She was excited about his mission, even though she didn't fully understand it. Are you going to bring back alien treasure, Daddy? Maybe, sweetheart. We're going to try. Good, she said seriously. Humans always try. After the call ended, Dongmin sat in his quarters looking out at the stars. Tomorrow they would launch into the unknown. They would probably die in the attempt, but they would try with everything they had, and somehow that felt like the most human thing possible. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Through the bridge viewports, the crew could see their destination. The quantum storm stretched across space like a living thing, purple and gold energy, swirling in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Captain Dongmin stood behind the pilot's seat where Taeho was running final system checks. The readings on the displays made no sense. Gravity was pointing in 3 different directions at once. Time moved faster in some areas and slower in others. Radiation levels spiked and dropped without warning. Sensors are going crazy, reported Soo-jin from the science station. I'm reading energy patterns that shouldn't exist. The storm is changing the basic laws of physics. How long until we reach the artifact? Dongmin asked. At current speed, about 6 hours, Taeho replied. But that's assuming time moves normally, which it won't. Chief Engineer Ji-hai's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. Captain, I'm seeing stress readings on the hull already. The gravitational fields are pulling us in different directions. Can we handle it? For now. But this is just the edge of the storm. It's going to get much worse. Dongmin activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, This is the captain. We are beginning our approach to the quantum storm. Everyone knows why we're here. Everyone knows the risks. Do your jobs, trust your training, and remember that impossible just means nobody's done it yet. Ship began to shake as they entered the outer layers of the storm. The gravitational fields grabbed the Indomitable like invisible hands, trying to pull it apart. Metal groaned under stress no human ship was designed to handle. Hull stress at 60% of maximum, HFY reported, redistributing power to structural integrity fields. On the view screen, space itself seemed to ripple. Stars stretched into long streaks of light, then snapped back to points. Colors that had no names painted themselves across the void. Temporal distortion field. Ahead, Sujin called out. Time is moving at half-normal speed in that area. Can we go around it? Dongmin asked. Taeho studied his navigation display. There's another field to port where time moves 3 times faster, and something weird to starboard that my instruments can't identify. So we go through the middle and hope for the best, pretty much. This was the difference between human and alien approaches to space travel. Alien ships had powerful computers that calculated safe routes through dangerous areas. They waited for optimal conditions and planned for every possible contingency. Humans looked at impossible situations and decided to wing it. Take us in, Dongmin ordered. The Indomitable plunged into the temporal field. Time slowed around them like thick honey. The ship's systems, designed to operate in normal space-time, began to lag. Computer responses that should have been instant took long seconds. The artificial gravity fluctuated. Taeho gripped the flight controls with white knuckles. Manual control only, he muttered. The computer can't compensate for time moving at different speeds. He was flying by instinct now, feeling the ship's responses rather than watching instruments. His hands moved constantly on the controls, adjusting for gravitational pulls that changed every second. How do you know which way to go? Sujin asked, watching the chaotic swirl of energy around them. I don't, Taeho admitted. But the ship wants to fly. I just have to let it. The temporal field released them suddenly, and normal time snapped back like a rubber band. Alarms blared across the bridge as systems that had been struggling in slow time suddenly accelerated. Hull stress at 75%, HFY reported. I'm rerouting power from non-essential systems. Define non-essential, Dongmin said. Life. Support in empty areas, recreational facilities, about half the lights. We're flying bare bones now. Through the viewport, they could see wreckage floating in the storm, twisted metal that had once been ships from a dozen different species. Some pieces were huge, from vessels the size of cities. Others were tiny, from small exploration craft. All of them had failed. I'm picking up debris from the Nexari expedition, Sujin said, studying her sensors. They made it further than most, almost to the middle of the storm. What stopped them? Dongmin asked. Unknown. The wreckage shows signs of massive energy discharge, but I can't identify the source. A new alarm sounded. This one was different. More urgent. Gravity well directly ahead, Taeho announced. It's big, really big. On the screen, space seemed to bend inward like a funnel. Energy swirled down into darkness that hurt to look at. That's not on any of our charts, Sujin said. The storm creates new obstacles all the time, Taeho explained. Physics gets weird when you mess with quantum fields. Can we go around? Not without adding 4 hours to our journey, and our hull might not last that long. Dongmin considered their options. The safe choice was to find another route. The careful choice was to retreat and try a different approach. The logical choice was to turn around and report that the mission was impossible. "Take us through," he ordered. Tejo didn't question the decision. He adjusted their course directly toward the gravity well. "Everyone hold on. This is going to get interesting." The indomitable dove toward the swirling darkness. Gravity grabbed the ship and accelerated it far beyond safe speeds. The hull groaned under forces that should have crushed it flat in the engine room. Ji-Hai watched her instruments climb into the red zones. "Captain, if I push the engines any harder, we'll lose containment." "How long can you hold it together?" "As long as you need me to." It was a human answer to an impossible question. Not, "I can hold it for exactly 17 minutes and 34 seconds. Just, as long as you need me to." The gravity well spun them around like a toy. Tejo fought to keep the ship oriented correctly, his hands moving faster than thought. Through the viewport, the stars became streaks of light, then solid walls of color. "Something's wrong," Sujin called out. "The gravity field is changing. It's not natural." "What do you mean?" "I mean something is controlling it. This isn't random physics. Something is directing the gravity well." Before anyone could respond, the darkness at the center of the well began to glow. Light emerged from the impossible depths. But it was the wrong kind of light. It felt cold and ancient, and angry. "Energy surge," Sujin reported. "Something's coming out of the well." The thing that emerged looked like a ship, but not quite. It was made of the same dark energy as the gravity well, shaped into something that hurt to look at directly. It moved without engines, turned without thrusters, and began following their ship. "Is it alien?" Dongmin asked. "I don't think so," Sujin replied, studying her readings. "I think it's older than that, much older." The dark ship began to close the distance. Whatever it was, it moved faster than anything in known space, until "We outrun it?" Dongmin asked. "Not in the gravity well," Tejo said. "We need to get clear first." "How long?" 2 minutes. "Will it catch us before then?" "Probably." Dongmin activated the ship-wide communication again. "All hands, we have company. Something old and unfriendly is following us. We're going to try to outrun it, but be ready for anything." The dark ship was close enough now that they could see details. It wasn't built by any known species. The design was wrong, as if someone had taken the idea of a spaceship and twisted it into something that shouldn't exist. "Captain," Wu Jin's voice came from the weapons station. "I don't think our weapons will work on that thing." "Why not?" "Because I'm not sure it's entirely real. My targeting systems can't lock onto it." The dark ship fired something that wasn't quite a weapon. The energy beam hit their shields and passed right through them. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's lights began to dim. "It's draining our power," Ji-Hai reported. "Whatever that beam was, it's pulling energy directly from our systems." "Can you compensate?" "I'm trying, but it's like fighting gravity with a flashlight." The Indomitable burst free of the gravity well, but their pursuer followed effortlessly. The dark ship fired again, and more systems went offline. "Life support is failing," Ji-Hai announced. "We're losing atmosphere." Dongmin looked around his bridge. His crew was calm, focused, doing their jobs despite facing something impossible. They were about to die and nobody was panicking. It was the most human thing he had ever seen. "Sujin," he said quietly. "Any ideas?" She was studying her instruments with intense concentration. "Maybe. The storm's quantum fields are chaotic, right?" What if we use that chaos against our friend back there? Explain. We fly directly into the worst part of the storm. Our ship might survive because we're expecting chaos. But something that old and powerful might be too rigid to adapt. Taeho laughed, though it sounded a bit hysterical. So we're going to fly into the most dangerous part of a quantum storm to escape something that's trying to kill us? That's the plan. I love this job, Taeho muttered, and turned the ship toward the heart of the storm. The heart of the quantum storm was unlike anything in human experience. Space itself seemed alive, twisting and changing color with each passing second. Gravity pointed in directions that shouldn't exist. Time moved in spirals instead of straight lines. The Indomitable flew through this chaos like a cork in a hurricane. The ship groaned and shuddered with each impact from the storm's energy waves. Warning lights flashed across every control panel. Hull stress at 90%, G. High reported from engineering. I've rerouted everything I can. We're running on backup power for most systems. Behind them, the dark ship had followed them, into the storm. But Sujin's plan was working. The ancient vessel moved uncertainly now, as if the chaotic physics confused it. It's slowing down, Taeho observed. Whatever that thing is, it doesn't like unpredictable conditions. Good, Captain Dongmin said. How much further to the artifact? According to our charts, we should be almost there. But Taeho paused, studying his instruments. Something's wrong with these readings. Sujin looked up from her science station. What kind of wrong? I'm showing massive objects ahead. Lots of them. But they're not on any of our maps. The storm cleared for a moment, and they could see what lay before them. The bridge fell silent. They had found the graveyard. Thousands of ships floated in the relatively calm eye of the quantum storm. Vessels from dozens of species, representing millions of years of attempts to reach the Vorthak artifact. Some were so old that rust had eaten through their hulls. Others looked like they had been destroyed yesterday. This is where they all came to die, Sujin whispered. The ships formed rough circles around a central point where something glowed with soft blue light. Even at this distance, they could see it was artificial. The Vorthak artifact waited for them at the center of the graveyard. Reading energy signatures from multiple sources, Sujin reported. Some of these ships still have power. After all this time, the storm preserves things. Time moves differently here. Some of these ships might have been destroyed yesterday from their perspective. Taeho guided the Indomitable through the maze of dead vessels. Each ship told a story. Nexari exploration craft with their crystal hulls shattered. Zephyrian military vessels twisted into impossible shapes. Thraxian battleships that looked like they had been melted and reformed. There, Sujin pointed at the view screen. The artifact. At the center of the graveyard sat a structure that was clearly not natural. It looked like a crystal pyramid the size of a building, but the angles were wrong. It hurt to look at directly, as if the human brain couldn't properly process its geometry. That's what killed all these ships? Wu Jin asked from the weapons station. No, Sujin replied, studying her readings carefully. The ships weren't destroyed by the artifact. They were destroyed trying to reach it. What's the difference? Before Sujin could answer, new alarms began sounding. The sensor displays lit up with warnings. Energy surge, Sujin announced. Something's activating. Around the graveyard, lights began appearing. Not on the dead ships, but floating in space itself. The lights grew brighter and began moving toward them. What are those? Dongmin asked. Sujin's face went pale as she read her instruments. Guardian systems. The Vorthak left automated defenses. The lights resolved into shapes as they approached. They looked like geometric patterns made of pure energy, constantly shifting and changing form. Some were triangular, others circular, and a few had shapes that human geometry couldn't describe. How many? Dongmin asked. I count at least 50, and more are appearing. The first guardian reached the outer edge of the graveyard and touched one of the dead ships. The ancient vessel simply disappeared, converted into energy that the guardian absorbed. They're using the wrecks as fuel, Sujin realized. That's why some ships still have power. The guardians have been keeping them alive to use as energy sources. More guardians emerged from hiding places throughout the graveyard. They had been waiting, conserving power, maintaining themselves by feeding on the ships that came to challenge them. Weapon systems online, Wu Jin reported. But Captain, I don't think our guns are going to do much against those things. Why? Not? Because they're not really solid. They're made of energy held together by some kind of force field. Our projectile weapons will pass right through them. What about energy weapons? They'll probably absorb the energy and use it to make themselves stronger. The first guardian approached the Indomitable. It moved without any visible propulsion, flowing through space like liquid light. When it was close enough, it extended, something like a tentacle toward their ship. Evasive maneuvers, Dongmin ordered. Tae-ho threw the ship into a spinning dive that would have crushed the crew under normal gravity. But the storm's chaotic fields twisted physics, making the impossible maneuver feel like a gentle curve. The Guardian's energy tentacle missed them by meters. More incoming, Sujin warned. They're coordinating their attack. 3 more Guardians approached from different angles, timing their attack to arrive simultaneously. Tae-ho flew the ship through a gap between 2 dead vessels, using the wrecks as cover. This isn't working, Dongmin said. We can't dodge them forever. Captain, Jihai's voice came from engineering. I might have an idea. These Guardians are energy beings, right? What if we overloaded them? How? By giving them more energy than they can handle. I could rig our main reactor to release a controlled burst. If I time it right when they try to drain our power... That sounds dangerous. Everything we're doing is dangerous. But it might work. Another Guardian swept past the ship, its energy field crackling as it tried to grab them. This time it came, close enough that the bridge lights dimmed. They're learning our flight patterns, Tae-ho observed. Each attack is more accurate than the last. Do it, Dongmin decided. Ji-hee, prepare your overload. Understood. But Captain, if this goes wrong, we'll lose main power, maybe permanently. And if we don't try it, we'll be dead in 5 minutes. I like our odds better with the overload. The Guardians pressed their attack. More energy beings emerged from the graveyard until the space around the Indomitable filled with hostile lights. They moved in coordinated patterns, cutting off escape routes and forcing the human ship toward the center of the graveyard. They're hurting us, Sujin realized. Driving us toward something. Toward what? I don't know. But there's a massive energy reading at the center of the formation. Something bigger than the other Guardians. Through the swarm of smaller energy beings, they caught glimpses of something enormous. It was the same geometric energy as the others, but the size of a battleship. Ancient and patient and very angry. The boss Guardian, Wu Jin muttered. Great. Ji-hee. How's that overload coming? Dongmin asked. Almost ready, But Captain, you need to get us close to several Guardians at once. The energy burst won't travel far in this environment. Tejo looked at his captain. How close? Close enough that we can't miss. That's close enough for them to tear us apart. Probably. Tejo grinned. It was the expression of someone who had just been asked to do something impossible and was looking forward to the challenge. In that case, everyone hold on. We're going to thread the needle. He aimed the Indomitable directly at the largest concentration of Guardians. The energy beings moved to intercept, forming a wall of crackling power between the ship and its target. Steady, Dongmin said quietly. Steady. The Guardians reached out with energy tentacles, trying to grab the ship. Tejo flew between them, like a madman, spinning and diving and climbing in patterns that made no sense. Now! Dongmin shouted. Reactor overload in 3, 2, 1. Jihai triggered the release. The Indomitable's reactor discharged 6 months' worth of stored energy in a single burst. The wave of power hit the surrounding Guardians like a tsunami. For a moment, the energy beings glowed brighter than stars. Then, one by one, they began to overload. Unable to process the massive influx of energy, they destabilized and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The explosion chain reaction spread through the Guardian formation. Dozens of energy beings were destroyed in seconds, but not all of them. The giant Guardian at the center of the formation absorbed the energy from its destroyed companions. It grew larger and brighter, feeding on the destruction of its own kind. That didn't go as planned, Jihai admitted over the communication system. No kidding, Dongmin replied, watching the giant Guardian turn toward their ship. How's our reactor? Offline. We're running on emergency power. Life support will last maybe 6 hours. The giant Guardian approached them slowly, like a predator that knew its prey was trapped. Energy crackled around its form as it prepared to finish what the smaller Guardians had started. Well, Tejo said cheerfully, we made it further than most. We're not dead yet, Dongmin replied. Give it a few minutes. Sujin was still studying her instruments, even as their situation became hopeless. Captain, I'm reading something strange about that big Guardian. Strange how? It's not just an energy being. There's something solid at its core. Something mechanical. A ship? I think so. A very old ship, covered in energy fields. Dongmin looked at the approaching Guardian with new understanding. It's not a Guardian. It's a victim. Something that got caught by the original defense system and converted into part of it. Can we help it? I doubt it. The giant Guardian continued its slow circle around the Indomitable. Captain Dongmin could feel the weight of its attention like a physical presence. This ancient entity had destroyed thousands of ships over millions of years. But something about the human vessel made it pause. Sujin, Dongmin said quietly, try to establish communication. With what? We barely have emergency power. Use whatever we have. Maybe it will respond to radio signals. Sujin activated their basic communication array and began broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Unknown entity. This is the human vessel Indomitable. Can you understand us? The Guardian stopped circling. Its energy field pulsed in what might have been a response pattern. I think it heard us, Sujin said. But I can't translate the response. The pattern is too complex. Try something simpler, Dongmin suggested. Basic mathematics, universal concepts. Sujin began broadcasting a sequence of prime numbers. The Guardian's response was immediate. It repeated the sequence back to them, then continued with the next set of primes. "It's intelligent," she confirmed, "and it's trying to communicate." "What do we say to something that's been trapped here for thousands of years?" Tejo asked. Before anyone could answer, the Guardian's energy field began to change. The chaotic swirls of power organized themselves into recognizable patterns. Pictures formed in the energy, showing the Guardian's history. They saw a ship, sleek and beautiful, approaching the Vorthak artifact long ago. The vessel was unlike any current galactic design, clearly from an extinct civilization. As it reached for the artifact, the Guardian systems activated and captured it. The images showed the ship's crew being converted into energy. Their consciousness merged with the Guardian system. They became part of the defense network, forced to destroy other ships that came seeking the artifact. "It's a prisoner," Sujin whispered. "The Vorthak didn't just create Guardians. They converted living beings into Guardians." The energy display continued, showing countless ships being destroyed over the millennia. Each time, the Guardian grew stronger, but also more tormented. It was forced to kill beings who were only seeking knowledge, just as it had once done. "Can you show us the artifact?" Dongmin asked. The Guardian's display shifted, revealing the crystal pyramid at the center of the graveyard. But now they could see what it really was. The geometric patterns hurt to look at, not because they were alien, but because they were wrong. The artifact was designed to warp space and time around itself. New images formed, showing the artifact's true purpose. It wasn't a tool for space travel or scientific research. It was a weapon of incredible power, designed to destroy entire solar systems by destabilizing their stars. "It's a doomsday device," Sujin said in horror. "The Vorthak built it to destroy their enemies." "Then why are we trying to get it?" Wu Jin asked from his weapons station. "Because nobody knows what it really is," Dongmin replied. "The galactic community thinks it's a peaceful technology." The Guardian's energy field pulsed again, and new images appeared. These showed what would happen if the artifact was removed from the quantum storm. Without the storm's chaotic energy to contain it, the weapon would activate automatically. It would begin converting nearby stars into nova bombs. "It would destroy everything," Sujin said. "The whole galactic arm would be sterilized." "So, the Guardians aren't protecting the artifact," Dongmin realized. "They're protecting the universe from it." The giant Guardian pulsed in what seemed like agreement. For millions of years it had been forced to kill innocent explorers to prevent a greater catastrophe. It was a tragic Guardian, sacrificing its conscience to save countless lives. "There has to be another way," Dongmin said. "We can't just leave it here forever." The Guardian showed them images of previous attempts to solve the problem. Scientists from various species had tried to disable the artifact safely. All had failed. The weapon was too well protected and too dangerous to approach directly. "What if we don't try to disable it?" Sujin suggested. "What if we try to change what it is?" The Guardian's energy field flickered with what might have been confusion. "Look," Sujin continued, "the Vorthak designed this as a weapon, but what if we could reprogram it, make it something else entirely?" "Is that possible?" Dongmin asked. "I don't know. But humans have a long history of taking things designed for one purpose and using them for something completely different. We turned rocket engines into spacecraft. We turned military networks into the internet. We turned weapons into tools." The Guardian showed them more images of the artifact's construction. The weapon was controlled by a quantum computer that existed partially outside normal space-time. Reprogramming it would require entering the same dimensional space and convincing an artificial intelligence older than most stars to change its fundamental nature. So we need to go inside the artifact and have a philosophical debate with a doomsday weapon, Taeho summarized. Has anyone mentioned lately that this mission is completely insane? Every day, Dongmin replied. But insane is what humans do. Best. The Guardian began showing them technical specifications for the artifact. It was sharing information that could help them attempt the impossible reprogramming. After millions of years of enforced silence, it was finally able to help someone. Try to solve the problem. Why is it helping us? Wu Jin asked. Because we're different, Su Jin answered. Every other species that came here wanted to take the artifact and use its power. We're the first ones who want to change what it is. How do we get inside? Dongmin asked. The Guardian's display showed a small opening at the base of the pyramid. It was heavily shielded and surrounded by energy fields that would kill most life forms instantly. But the Guardian could create a brief, safe passage at the cost of its own existence. It's offering to sacrifice itself to give us a chance, Su Jin said quietly. The ancient being had been trapped for so long, forced to destroy so many innocent explorers. Now it finally had a chance to help instead of harm. It was willing to die for that opportunity. There has to be another way, Dongmin said. We're not sacrificing anyone else for this mission. The Guardian pulsed insistently, showing them that. Time was running out. The quantum storm was beginning to destabilize. Soon the entire graveyard would collapse into normal space, and the artifact's containment would fail. How long do we have? Dongmin asked. The energy display showed approximately 6 hours before catastrophic failure. Can we repair our reactor in time? He asked Jihai over the communication system. Not with the parts we have, she replied. The overload damaged too many components. What if we cannibalize parts from the dead ships? Su Jin suggested. Most of them use completely different technology, but Jihai paused. Maybe I could jury-rig something. Give me 30 minutes to survey what's available. While Jihai worked on power solutions, Su Jin studied the Guardian's technical data about the artifact. The quantum computer at its heart was incredibly sophisticated, but it was also isolated. It had been running the same program for millions of years without any external input. I think I understand, she said suddenly. The artifact isn't evil. It's just following its original programming. The Vorthak designed it to destroy enemy civilizations, and that's all it knows how to do. Can we teach it something else? Dongmin asked. Maybe, if we can establish communication and show it new possibilities. You want to have a conversation with a weapon of mass destruction? I want to show it that destruction doesn't have to be the only solution to problems. Taeho laughed. Su Jin, you realize you're talking about giving therapy to a doomsday device? Stranger things have worked. The Guardian continued providing technical assistance, but its energy field was growing dimmer. Maintaining communication was draining its power reserves. We need to make a decision, Dongmin said. Do we try Su Jin's approach, or do we retreat and report that the artifact is too dangerous to recover? If we retreat, Su Jin pointed out, the storm will eventually fail anyway. The artifact will activate on its own and destroy everything. And if we try to reprogram it, we might trigger it accidentally and destroy everything faster. Or we might save the galaxy. Dongmin looked around his bridge at his crew. They were exhausted, running on emergency power in a ship that was barely holding together. They had already survived more than anyone had expected. They could leave now with honor, having discovered the truth about the artifact, but that wasn't why they had come. Hi, he called down to engineering. How's that? Power situation? I think I can get us enough energy for one attempt. But Captain, if this doesn't work, we won't have power for a second try. Understood. Sujin, start working on your communication protocols. Taeho, plot a course to the artifact. Everyone else, prepare for the most important conversation in galactic history. The Guardian's energy field brightened one last time, showing them an image of the galaxy as it could be, peaceful, prosperous, connected by stable wormhole networks instead of threatened by ancient weapons. Then it began to fade, conserving its remaining power for the task ahead. One chance, Dongmin said quietly. We get one chance to convince a weapon to become a tool. No, pressure, Taeho muttered. Actually, Sujin said, studying her translation protocols, pressure is exactly what we need. The artifact has to understand that the universe has changed since it was created. The Indomitable limped toward the Vorthak artifact on emergency power. Chief Engineer Hi had performed miracles with spare parts from dead ships, but their reactor was running on borrowed time. Every few minutes, the lights dimmed as another jury-rigged component failed. Power at 40% and falling, Hi reported. I can give you maybe 2 hours before we lose everything. Captain Dong Min studied the crystal pyramid growing larger on their view screen. The artifact's geometry still hurt to look at directly, but now he could see the small opening the Guardian had shown them. It was barely large enough for their ship to pass through. Sujin, are you ready for contact? He asked. Sujin looked up from her science station, surrounded by notes and translation algorithms. She had been working for hours to develop a communication protocol that might work with an artificial intelligence millions of years old. As ready as anyone can be for talking to a doomsday weapon, she replied. I've programmed basic concepts into the translation matrix. Mathematics, physics, simple logical structures. But, Captain, there's no guarantee it will want to listen. What? If it's hostile? Wu Jin asked from weapons. Then we're dead, Sujin said matter-of-factly. But being dead isn't worse than letting it destroy the galaxy. Taeho guided their ship through the opening in the artifact. The moment they crossed the threshold, everything changed. The chaotic energy of the quantum storm vanished, replaced by perfect geometric patterns that seemed to extend forever in all directions. We're inside some kind of pocket dimension, Sujin reported. The space here is larger than the artifact's external structure, much larger. Through the viewports, they could see vast halls that stretched beyond the horizon. Crystalline walls pulsed with energy patterns that moved like living things. At the center of it all, a massive structure rose like a mountain made of light. That's the quantum computer, Sujin said. The mind that controls everything. How do we approach it? Dongmin asked, very carefully. Taeho flew them deeper into the artifact's interior. The scale was overwhelming. They were like insects flying through a cathedral designed by gods. Energy patterns swirled around them, curious but not hostile. Think it knows we're here, Sujin said. The patterns are changing. It's trying to understand what we are. Begin transmission, Dongmin ordered. Sujin activated their communication array and began broadcasting the mathematical sequences she had prepared. Prime numbers, geometric relationships, basic physical constants, universal concepts that any intelligence should recognize. The response was immediate. Energy patterns throughout the space began organizing themselves into familiar shapes. The artifact was answering in the same mathematical language. Contact established, Sujin announced. It's definitely intelligent. and curious. Can you ask it about its programming? Sujin transmitted more complex concepts, questions about purpose, function, and original design. The artifact's response came as a flood of images and data that overwhelmed their translation systems. They saw the Vorthak civilization at its height, beings of incredible intelligence and power, but also terrible arrogance. They had built the artifact as the ultimate weapon, designed to destroy any threat to their empire. The images showed the weapon's first test, an entire solar system converted to energy in seconds. Billions of lives ended to demonstrate Vorthak's superiority. It's proud of what it was built to do, Sujin said quietly. Destruction is its purpose, its identity. Can you explain that there might be other purposes? Dongmin asked. Sujin began, transmitting new concepts. She showed the artifact examples of human technology, machines designed for one purpose but used for many others, engines that became generators, weapons that became tools, military networks that became communication systems. The artifact's response was confused. The concept of changing purpose was foreign to its programming. It doesn't understand, Sujin reported. To the Vorthak, everything had a single permanent function. The idea of adaptation is alien to it. Show it what humans do, Dongmin suggested. Show it our history. Sujin began broadcasting human achievements. She showed cities built from the ruins of wars, medical techniques developed from battlefield surgery, space programs that grew from weapons research. Again and again, humans taking things meant for destruction and turning them into tools for creation. The artifact's energy patterns began to change. The geometric perfection became more chaotic, more human. I think it's beginning to understand, Sujin said. But it's fighting the concept. Its core programming is resisting any change. What if we don't try to change its programming? Dongmin suggested. What if we give it a new perspective on what destruction means? Explain. Show it that creation and destruction are part of the same cycle, that destroying old systems can create opportunities for new ones. Sujin transmitted new images. She showed how human cities grew from the destruction of forests, how new technologies replaced old ones, how even death and decay created soil for new life. The artifact's response was different this time. Instead of confusion, there was something like interest. It's asking questions, Sujin reported. Complex questions about the relationship between destruction and creation. Answer them. For the next hour, Sujin engaged in the strangest conversation in human history. She explained philosophy to a weapon of mass destruction. She taught it about growth, change, and adaptation. She showed it that destruction could serve creation instead of opposing it. Slowly, the artifact's energy patterns began to shift. The rigid geometric forms became more fluid, more organic. The artificial intelligence was learning to think in new ways. I think it's working, Sujin said, but the core programming is still there. It's like having a new perspective on an old obsession. Can you suggest a new purpose for it? I'm trying, but it has to want to change. I can't force it. The artifact's questions became more complex. It wanted to understand human concepts of cooperation, growth, and mutual benefit. It was particularly fascinated by the idea of networks, systems where individual parts work together to create something greater than themselves. It's asking about galactic civilization, Sujin reported. How different species cooperate despite their differences. Show it the council chambers, Show it how 12 species work together. Sujin transmitted images of the Galactic Council, of trade networks, of scientific cooperation between species. She showed how diversity made the galaxy stronger, not weaker. The artifact's response was a burst of energy that made their instruments overload temporarily. When the readings cleared, something fundamental had changed. The energy patterns around them were no longer purely geometric. They flowed like water, like music, like life itself. "I think we did it," Sujin whispered. "It's rewriting its own programming." The massive quantum computer at the center of the space began to glow brighter. Energy flowed through crystalline pathways in new patterns. The artifact was rebuilding itself from the inside out. "What's it becoming?" Dongmin asked. "I'm not sure, but the energy signatures are completely different. Instead of weapons patterns, I'm seeing transportation matrices." New images flowed from the artifact. It was showing them plans for a network of stable wormholes connecting every inhabited system in the galaxy. The same energy that had once destroyed solar systems would now link them together. "It wants to become a communication system," Sujin said in amazement. "A network to connect all intelligent life." Will it work? The theory is sound. Better than sound, it's revolutionary. This could change everything about how we travel and communicate across the galaxy. But even as they celebrated, new alarms began sounding. The artifact's transformation was destabilizing the pocket dimension. Reality began to fracture around them as the space tried to adjust to its new purpose. "We need to get out of here," Taeho announced. "This place is coming apart." "The transformation isn't complete," Sujin protested. "If we leave now, it might revert to its original programming. And if we stay, we'll be dead when the dimension collapses." Dongmin made the hardest decision of his career. "Sujin, download everything you can about the new design. Taeho, get us out of here. Now." "What about the artifact?" "It has to finish the transformation on its own. We've given it the tools. Now we have to trust it to use them." The Indomitable raced toward the exit as the pocket dimension came apart around them. Crystalline walls cracked and shattered. Energy patterns collapsed into chaos. The quantum computer's glow became blinding as it wrestled with its new identity. They burst through the opening just as the artifact's exterior began to change. The impossible geometry was smoothing out, becoming something that human eyes could look at without pain. "The Guardian," Sujin said suddenly. "What happened to the Guardian?" They looked around the graveyard, but the ancient energy being was gone. Whether it had finally found peace or simply exhausted its power, they would never know. "Energy readings from the artifact are spiking," Sujin reported. "It's about to do something big." The crystal pyramid began to glow with soft, warm light. Then suddenly, it opened like a flower. Streams of energy reached out toward every corner of the galaxy, forming connections with inhabited systems light years away. "Stable wormhole formation detected," Sujin announced with awe in her voice. "It's actually working. The artifact is creating a permanent." The Indomitable drifted in the calm space where the quantum storm had been. Around them, the graveyard of ships was changing. The ancient wrecks that had floated here for millennia were beginning to glow with the same gentle light as the transformed artifact. "Sujin, what's happening to the dead ships?" Captain Dongmin asked. Sujin studied her instruments with growing amazement. "The artifact is healing them. It's using some kind of temporal restoration field to repair the damage." On the view screen, they watched impossible things happen. Twisted metal straightened itself, shattered hulls became whole again. Ships that had been destroyed thousands of years ago were putting themselves back together. "The crews," Medical Officer Yunji said softly. "Are the crews being restored too?" "No," Sujin replied after checking her readings. "The artifact can repair matter, but it can't bring back life. The ships are empty." One by one, the restored vessels began activating their emergency beacon systems. Ships from dozens of species representing millions of years of exploration were announcing themselves to the galaxy. "We need to report this to the Council," Dongmin decided. "They're going to want to know what happened here." He activated the long-range communication system. The signal would take hours to reach the nearest Council station, but the galaxy needed to know that the mission had succeeded in ways nobody could have predicted. "Council Station Alpha, this is Captain Dongmin of the Earth vessel Indomitable. Mission status: successful. The Vorthak artifact has been recovered and modified. The threat has been neutralized." While they waited for a response, Sujin continued studying the transformation. The artifact's energy network was expanding, reaching across the galaxy to establish connection points near every major inhabited system. "Captain," she said excitedly, "I'm detecting stable wormhole formation throughout the galactic arm. The artifact isn't just creating a communication network, it's building a transportation system." "How fast?" "Based on these energy readings, travel time between any 2 points in the galaxy would be reduced to hours instead of months, and the wormholes are stable. They don't require massive amounts of energy to maintain." The implications were staggering. Trade that took months could happen in days. Scientific cooperation could occur in real time across thousands of light years. The galaxy was becoming smaller, more connected. "And the power source?" Dongmin asked. "It's using zero-point energy extraction, drawing power directly from the quantum vacuum. The system is essentially self-sustaining." Chief Engineer Ji-Hai's voice came from the engine room. "Captain, our reactor is finally stable. The artifact's energy field is somehow repairing our damaged components." "Is that safe?" "More than safe. It's optimizing our systems. Our engines are running more efficiently than they ever have." As if to prove her point, the ship's lights brightened to full power for the first time since they had entered the storm. Environmental systems that had been running on emergency settings returned to normal operation. "The artifact is helping us," Dongmin realized. "It's actively trying to repair the damage it caused when it was a weapon." The first response from the galaxy came not from the Council, but from ships throughout the local sector. Vessels that had been traveling for weeks suddenly found themselves near stable wormhole entries. Trade ships that should have taken months to reach their destinations were arriving in days. The galactic communication networks lit up with reports, questions, and theories. Nobody understood what was happening, but everyone could see the effects. "Council. Station Alpha responding," their communication officer announced. "Ambassador Hyun Woo wants to speak with you directly." The familiar face of Earth's representative appeared on their main screen. Hyun Woo looked tired but relieved. "Captain Dong Min, the entire galaxy is experiencing gravitational anomalies and energy surges. Please tell me you haven't accidentally destroyed anything." "Quite the opposite, Ambassador. We've built something." Dongmin gave a brief summary of their encounter with the Guardian, their communication with the artifact, and the transformation that followed. Hyun Woo listened without interruption, his expression shifting from concern to amazement. "You convinced a doomsday weapon to become a transportation network?" "Sujin convinced it," Dongmin corrected. "I just gave her permission to try." "And it's working? The network is functional?" "More than functional. It's revolutionary. Travel times across the galaxy have been reduced by orders of magnitude. Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment, absorbing the implications. Captain, you realize what this means? You've changed the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. We've given everyone the tools to change it themselves, Dongmin corrected. What they do with those tools is up to them. The conversation was interrupted by new signals from across the galaxy. Ship captains were reporting successful transit through the wormhole network. Scientists were detecting energy patterns they had never seen before. Governments were trying to understand the political implications of instant transportation. The Council is calling an emergency session, Hyunwoo announced. Every species wants to understand what you've created. It's not what we created, Sujin interjected. It's what the artifact chose to become. We just showed it that there were other options besides destruction. More signals came in from the restored ships in the graveyard. Automated systems were broadcasting the last messages of their crews. Final logs from explorers who had died trying to reach the same artifact that had now become their monument. One message caught their attention. It was from a Nexari exploration vessel, recorded moments before its destruction centuries ago. To whoever finds this record, the crystalline voice said through their translators, we came seeking knowledge that could unite the galaxy. We hoped to find technology that would bring all species together in understanding. We have failed, but perhaps others will succeed where we could not. They got their wish, Yunji said quietly. Just not the way they expected. The artifact's energy network continued expanding. New wormhole connections formed every few minutes, linking star systems that had never been directly connected before. The galaxy was becoming a neighborhood instead of a vast wilderness. Captain, Sujin said, studying new data streams from the network, I'm detecting something interesting. The artifact isn't just creating transportation links, it's also establishing communication channels. What kind of communication? Universal translation protocols. The network is learning the languages and thought patterns of every species it connects to. It's creating a real-time translation system for the entire galaxy. The implications were even more staggering than the transportation network. Not only could beings travel instantly across the galaxy, they could communicate with anyone they met without language barriers. The Vorthak word for their artifact, Sujin continued, translates roughly as the unifier. I always thought it meant unifying through conquest, but maybe they intended something different. Maybe they built it to bring people together, Dongmin suggested, and only later corrupted it into a weapon. Or maybe, Taeho said from the pilot's seat, they never understood the difference between unity and domination. The transformed artifact pulsed brighter, and new data flowed through the network. It was sharing the technical specifications for the wormhole generators, making the technology available to every connected civilization. It's open sourcing itself, Sujin said in amazement. Anyone can build additional network nodes. The system is designed to grow and expand. Why would it do that? Because it learned what humans do best. We share our tools. We make our discoveries available to everyone, even our competitors. The communication system activated again. This time it was Counselor Veltar, the Zephyrian representative whose blue eyes were flickering rapidly with what they had learned was excitement. Captain Dongmin. Veltar's translated voice carried an emotion they had never heard before. Wonder. We are receiving reports from across the galaxy. Ships are traveling between star systems in hours instead of months. Our scientists are communicating directly with colleagues thousands of light years away. What have you done? We gave an ancient weapon a new perspective on its purpose. Dongmin replied simply. The mathematical models are extraordinary, Veltar continued. The energy efficiency is beyond our theoretical maximums. The stability readings are perfect. This technology should not be possible. The Vorthak were apparently better engineers than anyone realized, Sujin said. They just used their skills for the wrong purposes. Around them, the graveyard was completing its transformation. The restored ships were organizing themselves into neat formations, their navigation lights blinking in synchronized patterns. It was like watching the dead come back to life, not as individuals, but as monuments to exploration and discovery. The other council members are concerned, Veltar admitted. Some species are worried about the security implications of instant travel. Others fear economic disruption from such rapid transportation. Change is always frightening, Hyunwoo's voice added as he rejoined the conversation. But it's also necessary for growth. What do you recommend we tell the council? Veltar asked. Dongmin looked around his bridge at his crew. They had volunteered for a suicide mission and instead had changed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. 1 year later, Ambassador Hyunwoo stood in the renovated council chambers on the space station orbiting Kepler Prime. The massive hall had been redesigned to accommodate delegates from 47 different species instead of the original 12. New civilizations were joining the galactic community every month, connected by the network that had once been a weapon of mass destruction. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships arriving and departing through the stable wormhole that now provided instant access to this central hub. Vessels from dozens of species moved in organized patterns that would have been impossible before the network existed. The integration statistics are remarkable, reported Counselor Veltar, his blue eyes bright with enthusiasm. Trade volume has increased by 847%. Scientific collaboration projects have grown by over 2,000%. Cultural exchange programs are operating on scales we never imagined possible. The Nexari representative, her crystal body flickering, with pleased colors, added her own report. The universal translation protocols have eliminated most communication barriers. We are seeing philosophical discussions between species that have completely different concepts of existence. Hyunwoo nodded, but his attention was focused on the newest addition to the council chambers. A section had been reserved for representatives of civilizations from other galaxies, beings who had never before been able to participate in galactic governance due to the impossible distances involved. The Andromeda Coalition has requested formal diplomatic relations, announced the Thraxian delegate. Their technology is different from ours, but the network has made regular communication possible. What do they offer? Asked the Corvin representative. Advanced stellar engineering techniques, new approaches to artificial intelligence, and mathematical concepts that our species haven't discovered yet. In exchange, they want access to our biological sciences and cultural archives. It was exactly the kind of exchange that the old galaxy had rarely seen. Species separated by impossible distances were now sharing their greatest achievements with beings they had never met. Any concerns about security? Hyunwoo asked. Minimal, Veltar replied. The network itself seems to discourage aggressive behavior. Ships that enter the wormholes with hostile intent experience. Difficulties. What kind of difficulties? Their navigation systems become unreliable. Their weapons malfunction. Their life support systems require constant attention. It's as if the network can sense intention and responds accordingly. Hyunwoo smiled. The artifact had learned more from humanity than just the difference between destruction and creation. It had also learned about human concepts of justice and self-defense. The session was interrupted by an announcement that made everyone pause. Incoming priority transmission from Earth vessel Indomitable. Captain Dongmin's familiar face appeared on the main display. He looked older than Hyunwoo remembered, with more gray in his hair and new lines around his eyes, but he also looked satisfied in a way that came from completing important work. Ambassador Council members, Dongmin said formally. I'm transmitting from the Vale Nebula sector. We've made contact with another guardian entity. The council chamber fell silent. They had hoped that the Kepler 442 Guardian was unique, but recent explorations had suggested that the Vorthak had left other weapons scattered throughout the galaxy. Status of the entity? Veltar asked. Transformed, Dongmin replied with a tired smile. Sujin spent 3 days explaining human philosophy to what used to be a star killer. It's now operating as a stellar maintenance system, extending the life of aging stars and preventing supernova events. How many Vorthak weapons have you encountered now? Hyunwoo asked. This was the 7th. Each one has chosen transformation over destruction when presented with alternatives. The pattern is consistent. Show them that creation is more fulfilling than destruction, and they rebuild themselves for constructive purposes. The implications were staggering. If every Vorthak weapon could be converted, the galaxy would gain technologies that could solve problems they had never dreamed of addressing. What's your next assignment? The Nexari representative asked. The Outer Rim. We've detected energy signatures that suggest another weapon system in the Horsehead Nebula. This one appears to be designed for biological warfare. Hyunwoo winced. Are you confident you can handle it? Sujin is already working on communication protocols. She's become quite good at talking to ancient artificial intelligences, and our crew has been reinforced. The display shifted to show the Indomitable's bridge. Hyunwoo was surprised to see faces from several different species working alongside the human crew. A Zephyrian navigation specialist, a Nexari communications officer, and what appeared to be a young Thraxian engineer. Mixed crew? Hyunwoo asked. Volunteers, Dongmin explained. After word spread about our missions, we started getting applications from across the galaxy. Everyone wants to be part of the impossible mission crew. Engineer Ji Hai appeared in the background, directing the installation of new equipment. We've integrated technologies from 12 different species, she called out. The ship is more capable than ever. And more importantly, added Sujin, who was visible at her science station, we have perspectives from multiple cultures. When we encounter the next weapon, we can offer it examples of cooperation from across the galaxy. It was a perfect example of how the network had changed everything. The impossible mission that had once been Earth's desperate gamble was now a joint effort involving the best minds from dozens of species. The Horsehead mission will be our most challenging yet, Dongmin continued. But we've learned that impossible just means nobody's tried the right approach yet. After the transmission ended, the council returned to their regular business. But Hyunwoo found himself thinking about the changes he had witnessed over the past year. Trade agreements that once took years to negotiate were completed in weeks. Scientific discoveries were shared instantly across the galaxy. Cultural exchanges had led to art forms that no single species could have imagined. The network had done more than connect places. It had connected minds and possibilities. Ambassador, Veltar approached him after the session ended. I have been studying human historical records, trying to understand your species' approach to problem solving. What have you learned? That humans have a unique talent for seeing potential where others see only problems. Most species would have viewed the Vorthak weapons as threats to be avoided. Humans saw them as opportunities for improvement. "We don't like giving up," Hyunwoo admitted, even when giving up would be logical. This trait has transformed our galaxy. Before the network, we were 12 separate civilizations that occasionally cooperated. Now we are becoming a true galactic community. Through the chamber's viewports, they could see the constant flow of ships through the wormhole network. Beings who had never met were working together on projects that spanned multiple star systems. Problems that had seemed impossible were being solved through collaboration between species with completely different ways of thinking. "What do you think the galaxy will look like in another year?" Veltar asked. Hyunwoo considered the question carefully. The rate of change was accelerating. New technologies, new ideas, new forms of cooperation were emerging daily. "I think," he said finally, "that we'll look back on this as the moment when civilization truly began. Everything before the network was just preparation." "And what about the weapons that are still waiting to be found? They'll be transformed one by one. Dongmin's crew has proven that no problem is truly impossible if you approach it with the right combination of stubbornness and creativity. Very human traits." The best human traits. As if summoned by their conversation, a new report appeared on Hyunwoo's personal communicator. It was from an exploration team in the Magellanic Clouds. They had detected another Vorthak energy signature. He forwarded the coordinates to the Indomitable and included a personal message. "Another impossible mission awaits. Try not to accidentally revolutionize anything this time." The response came back within minutes. "No promises. Captain Dongmin." Hyunwoo laughed, earning curious looks from nearby delegates. They didn't understand human humor, but they were learning to appreciate human optimism. 6 months later, reports arrived from the Magellanic Clouds. The biological warfare system had been successfully converted into a terraforming network that could transform barren worlds into garden planets in decades instead of millennia. The impossible mission crew had done it again. 3 years after the original mission to Kepler 442, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The wormhole network connected thousands of star systems. Former weapons of mass destruction operated as tools for construction and healing. Species that had never communicated were collaborating on projects that benefited everyone. And at the center of it all was a simple human truth. Impossible problems just needed human solutions. The galaxy had learned that the best way to handle a weapon was to teach it to build instead of destroy. The best way to handle distance was to eliminate it entirely. The best way to handle differences between species was to celebrate them as sources of strength. Most importantly, the galaxy had learned that sometimes the most logical response to an impossible situation was to try anyway. It was, everyone agreed, a very